Let's Make a Minigame, a monthly game dev series where we make a simple video game prototype in 8 hours-ish. We're honing in on our timeline and optimal workflow, an hour on game design, a half an hour on project setup, 2 hours on game code and art, 2 hours on game code and art, 1 hour on audio, a half an hour on UI, and then finally 1 last hour on Finalize and Post to itch.io, totaling in hopefully 8 hours.
Going into the game design, we took an hour already to go over what we want for the overall design of this game and keep it in within our scope. We brainstormed mainly taking some ideas from our Discord, a friend who made a game jam game that had sort of like a flashlight cone as a pretty significant element in the game. And we're like, that's kind of cool. We want to do that. We haven't really done a whole lot with light in our games. We wanted to give it sort of like 3 theme elements so that a friend could make some music ahead of time for us. So thank you to our friend there. They'll be credited in the itch page as well as the GitHub. The 3 themes are going to be flashlight and darkness, woods and outdoors, and then sort of like a cozy, spooky ambiance. And the music really reflects that. This will have more of a focus on game feel and ambiance rather than complex mechanics. That way we can sort of make it more of like a cozy game and really focus on the shine and the polish of it. We want to try doing different ambiance, different art style. And then we brainstormed some names. We had Frog Light, kind of like Fog Light, Swamp Swoop, Amphibiwitch, Frog Witch, and Frog Chanted. I like all the names in their own way. We went with Amphibiwitch. It's kind of fun to say, and it sounds a little unique.
For the theme of Amphibiwitch, we decided to do an overhead top-down perspective. This helps to reduce the kind of art load. A genuine top-down, not like a lot of top downs do like 3/4 view, but we're going to be doing just genuine top down perspective. When I envisioned this in my brain, I saw the player as kind of like a Red Riding Hood type character. So that color, that red, can contrast with the background, which is outdoorsy, going to be green, swampy, kind of like a muted pastel environment, where the main target of the sorcerer or witch is going to be frogs, collecting frogs. Because of the previous game jam, I'm working on my background, and we did a brainstorming of background items. These following items aren't going to be set in stone, they're just more of like inspiration on the different levels of how to build a background. First, I need the base, which is gonna just be some kind of grass, some simple base tile map terrain, and on that we can add small details that you can walk over. And so we brainstormed possibly moss, possibly mushrooms, possibly some puddles. Then medium ones that are kind of interactable that you can walk through so they don't stop your movement. Maybe they wiggle when you walk through them. So we were thinking cattails, maybe a bush. And then larger obstacles which you have to walk around, like stumps or rocks. Since we're thinking about ambience, considered the idea of fireflies, since this is a light versus darkness type thing, and not really sure how that'll play or if it will make it into this base prototype, but ambiance of fireflies would be pretty cool to add for the ambiance. Okay. And then we'll also have a staff asset, which is idle, and that's going to be our flashlight. The staff is going to glow. And then we'll also have a net asset where you swing to capture the frogs. And again, here is a little note saying that we're going to do higher resolution to try some new art style, just to try to mix things up, and been doing pixel art, so like let's try something different to learn something different, because that's one of the reasons we do these games. You wanted to include the flashlight cone that fades out, so that'll be interesting.
I might use some shaders for that. I might use just the built-in light. The main visual component is going to be darkness with a flashlight revealing the environment, primarily because, like I said earlier, we haven't really done much with light in our games. Moving on to the player experience, our primary gameplay loop's hopefully going to be pretty straightforward. You reveal a frog with a staff that acts as the flashlight. The frog will jump around or jump away if it's, know it's being like revealed. And then you have to move to the frog and then use the net to catch it. And that's the gameplay loop. You just do that over and over again.
So this is a little doodle of what we were envisioning as we talked about it. So you can see that there's kind of like 2 states of the player. You have the idle, and then you have the move. So hopefully it's this little red cape character with a little bit of hair that kind of like the cape flows a little bit when he moves. And then you have the frog. That's going to be your main interaction. And we have our flashlight asset, which is the staff. And we decided on these little glowing orbs. frames. Those ovals on the staff are like going to be the hands of the player. The staff flashlight will turn on and off as needed to look around. And then we have this big old net that is as big as the player because the frog has to get captured and the frog is as big as the player. So it's a little cheeky and adorable. So I'm really excited. I think it looks really cool at this concept already.
And with that, we will get on to doing some project setup. We're going to give ourselves a half hour here, that wasn't changed in the template, to go through and do what we usually do to set up the project. See you then. For the project setup section, we went a little bit over, had a little bit of complications in setting things up just because it's like a different resolution, doing things a little differently. Went 2 minutes over. Oh no. I cloned the 2D template project for Amphibiwitch and then pulled it down to my local machine, imported it for Godot, made sure the playground and placeholder scenes for things. I guess I didn't do game pieces yet because I didn't have time to do that. So set up the playground and Y scale. So I had to scale everything up to 1920 by 1080, but as you can see in these pictures, certain things didn't scale all the way. To do here would be to update the template repo for the 2D template project to support choosing different like base screen sizes so that it would work out better there. We'll get to that with a UI update section. So we have a whole half an hour dedicated to that later.
I got most of the main core pieces, just kind of rough sketches of them. I have a player idle sprite sheet. I'd like to do 8 frames. A player move, again, I'd like to do 8 frames. The frog idle, I think it really only needs to be like 2 to 4 frames, but I did 8 just because it was just easier to duplicate the project file for that. And then I also have a quick outline for a net and a quick outline for a staff. That's all I really had time for, honestly. Like, reflecting back on this section, I think I would like to have an hour for project setup, but we'd have to talk about where we could take that time out of. I would have liked to have been able to do more of the baseline for the background.
For the next section, we will be doing 2 hours of game code and artwork. Just going to sit down, really crunch on it for a couple hours, and we'll see what comes out of that.
So we just finished our first 2 hours of work, game coding and art. What I was able to accomplish in this time wasn't as much as I hoped. I was able to make a 4-frame assets of the player idle and the player move and try to clean it up, make it look more like we want it to. I also made 4 frames of the frog. It kind of like breathes or like gets big for a little bit there. And then I was able to make the net look a little bit more metallic and rounded, and as well as the staff. I'm really, really happy with how the orb turned out. I was struggling, since it is a different art style that I've actually never done before. I was struggling to try to keep everything in the same art style, like the frog or the player is. I think the dip net and staff is a little bit too smooth and clean looking. Then I was also able to work on this terrain where I have grass in the background. I have these little moss balls in the middle. This one's going to be the background where you cannot walk on, and then a couple of puddles of water and a rock. The rock I actually stole from Project Proteus, which was from a game jam that we did, and then some kind of craggy moss things. And the mushrooms, I'm actually really happy with the mushrooms. I think they might, instead of being a middle terrain of walking through them, they might be big enough that you have to walk around them.
And then on my end, I have a single screenshot here. It shows the lighting and everything with the player and the staff and all that. It's probably better to just do a little demo here. So we'll pull up Godot and you can see the player with the staff. So here in Godot, you can see the main playground scene, and I'll just play it really quick to give the quick little demo. I have the directional light set to in editor only so that I can see everything, but you see the idle animation here. You can't really see the player's movement animation, and so that's something I need to work on. Nice little smooth directional movement there. You can see the frog, and then if I click, I get rid of it. That's the current functionality. I can turn the light on and off. I actually was testing something, so kind of giving that like flashlight effect. And first, I just want to show off like the net with the player. So when we have like the player here, we can also have the net. That also has an animation, call it an attack animation. So it's really simple right now. It's you know, that's going to be the placeholder animation for now for catching frogs. I used a gradient texture with radial settings. I made it sort of oblong, but I did twice as long as it is wide, and I put it out here at an angle, and it's part of the staff, so it's always going to follow that orb. It doesn't follow like the player. The staff, I made it so that the light rotates to the point of being straight in front of the player. So that's why you get that effect that feels like the player is using it to look in front of them, even though it's like diagonal. And I kind of like that feeling because it doesn't feel so rigid. And it feels kind of like how it would if you had a staff that could produce light like that. But it gives a really neat feel. And I spent a lot of time on the feel, so I didn't really get all the way to the primary gameplay loop. That concludes our first game, code, and art segment.
All right, it is now day 2 of our mini game in a day, and we got a pretty good work session done this morning. I started with working on an icon. This is more for the Godot interface and will probably be on the itch page as like a thumbnail. And then I was able to do a quick rendering of the fireflies. We'll have some fireflies. I actually really like the shadow on the head of the firefly. And then I also made button idle and button pressed icons using the base button icon that we have from our game Splish Splashy Season. And then I worked on some tile map stuff. I noticed that the terrain was a little bit messy, so I turned that grass tile into a more clean version, so when it all comes together it's not as messy. The last thing that I worked on was the main menu screen. We had some scaling issues, so I just went in and started working on that, making it a better size, easier to read.
For game code stuff, I went ahead and made sure I focused on actually making the primary gameplay loop, because the first 2-hour session I focused a ton on the lights. I also made it so that the staff has limited rechargeable energy, so as you use it, it gets dim, so it kind of gives the player less incentive to just hold the light button the whole time. The net, I made it so that it has an animation for its attack, and then I integrated the rest of the art to make the playable level. Nice menu play. We've got our nice like kind of greenish glow. You can walk around, but you're not going to see any frogs because they don't get lit up by this. Oh, I ran into something. But I can't catch a frog if I can't see it. So boom, I gotta light it up and catch it. And as you swing around, you'll see their eyes sort of pop up here and you chase them down and catch them. But as you can see, the light dims out if you use it for too long, and you have to let go to let it recharge. This was really fun to do, play around with the lights. The fireflies have their own little lighting, so let me see if I can get a frog, to go underneath the fireflies and get lit up, so that's kind of cool.
So our next section is audio, and this is different from our previous outlines and timelines. We didn't pull out so much time for audio before. Also, our friend submitted an audio track, so I think it'll be kind of easier. Since you are usually doing audio stuff, I think I might get a head start on the UI.
Yeah, and I think that's probably how it's going to go, so looking forward to the next section.
And that concludes the session 3 audio portion of our game. So I started UI stuff. I made the joystick a better size, and then I added the buttons, which are the net and the staff buttons. Before they're just placeholder images. And I added the little frog for the frog counter. Then I started working ahead on the itch page stuff into the next section, and I started working on the banner, which I actually think worked out pretty nicely, and I think it looks pretty nice on the page, but we'll do that in the next section. And then I just reused the cover image for the icon. What did you do?
I worked on adding in a bunch of different sounds. So added in the background music from our friend, and then frog hit and frog idle, so all the noises the frogs make, swinging the net, player stepping, as well as having sort of like an active sound for when the staff is shooting light out. So we can do a demo of that. So we've got our background music here, which is really nice. Really appreciate our friend doing that. You go in here, we've got net swinging. You can hear the frogs ribbiting in the background, making fun of us. And then a very subtle light sound, as well as some step sounds. And then sound when you catch a frog. Catch one right here. That is the various sounds that we did for this one. I think it was about the same number of sounds as usual. It was really hard to get through all those sounds in an hour. It's definitely good to keep that scope really tight for those sounds. I think the frog idle thing was like the last thing I put in, and I really wanted to put it in. It was like the last 8 minutes of doing audio, but I really like it as like an ambient sound. It feels more immersive. So on to the next part. We're going to be doing UI related stuff for about a half an hour.
So on this section, I actually worked on the next section. Really, yeah, I have that bottom part. I did the background, and then more of my stuff is on the websites. So this is what I kind of did. I added that banner and tried to make it smooth into the side ones, which are backgrounds. I used a lot of the mushroom and I don't know, moss balls or whatever those frog warts. I don't know what they are. And then I added a little bit of a description. We added some control directions and some pictures on the side. And I found a font that I felt was like Swamp Witch. So that's what I worked on.
I worked on getting the UI things tightened up. Some good work was put into getting them pretty much most of the way there. Menu was already there, and then info tracking put together so that it was tracked by like the global auto load, a little pause menu there, and then win menu, and all of those navigate between each other. In theory, the mobile controls are all set up and good to go, so we'll do a quick little demo of things. Background music you can hear back there. It's a little quieter than last time because I'm not cranking it up. But yeah, click play, you can run around, do stuff, pause, and then if we catch 6 frogs, then on the 6th one, bloop, get the windscreen.
So that puts us on to the last section, finalize and post. And let's see what we can do to clean this stuff up. So in this section, worked on the itch page. I might have done more stuff on the itch page. For this section, I definitely added some animated fireflies on the main menu, and I made the fireflies in the actual game playground area move around as well.
I integrated the mobile controls to make it so that you can play it on mobile platforms, as well as made sure that the web gameplay works well for those who want to try it on itch.io on PCs. Those were the bulk of the work there, and then sort of exploring why web isn't quite optimized. There's known issues on Godot 4.3, so we need to try porting the game over to Godot 4.4, which sort of expands the scope a bit, and we just don't have time to do that in the whole 8 hours. I'm gonna try to port that over outside of this. If you play it on mobile and it's smooth, I did it. And if you didn't, oh well. And with that, we can do a little demo of the final product, and we'll actually play it on itch. Here we have the itch page. So here on itch, we have this absolutely beautiful page. I love it. It looks really awesome in the PC web view. The mobile web view is just a little constrained, so it still looks great. Got our nice music, some animated fireflies there, really cute. And you can even see the animated fireflies in here. And this is it. Yeah, you run around and catch some frogs. That's really it. And we demoed playing the game all the way through, so we'll let you play it all the way through and catch 6 frogs.
All right, so that really wraps up this is the 4th version of our Let's Make a Minigame. I think it went really well. You can see the progress of our previous minigames and then where this one is. I had a really good time working with a higher definition art, learned some things on the way, definitely gotta figure out a consistent art style.
I think I accomplished what I was looking to explore in this one, so wanted to work more on ambiance and game feel than like hard mechanics. In this one, explored using 2D lights, saw the cool things with that, experienced the drawbacks, and just learned there, as well as going into designing a game around feeling rather than like mechanics of X does this, player does X, Y happens, and more of like, what does it feel like? How do we make it work with a theme? I think was really fun to do. I want to give a special shout out to our friend Jordan Krebs, who is in the credits here for the music. The music is really, really good. Just really happy to have somebody else helping out.
So you can play our games just like this and our other games, our other mini game prototypes, our other regular prototypes, our other different versions of games on our itch.io page. Check it out. Check out the people who, help other contributors for our projects. And yeah, give it a go. It's free.